everyone, to the first episode of Here For It. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it so much. My name is Tess, and we have Whitney, and we are here to talk to you about post-grad life. And in our intro, we kind of talked about the purpose of our podcast, why it came about. But in our first episode, we kind of hope to go more into depth about that and talk about who we are, where we're at, so that you kind of have a better understanding of who we are and where we're at with our post-grad life.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here today and dive a little bit deeper into this. Todd, can you just let us all know kind of where you're at right now and just who you are as an individual and what you're doing?
Yes, I'll gladly do it. So right now we graduated 2020, spring 2020, during the height of coronavirus. So we didn't have a graduation, but still proud of everything we did. So I graduated with an agricultural science degree and minors in entrepreneurship, horticulture, and agribusiness management. I haven't done this in a while, so I almost forgot what I did. So yeah, let's reflect. So I did a couple of things at school that I feel like kind of helped me to land the job I have today. I was an ag advocate for the college, which is really important to me because essentially it's what the name is. I was advocating for ag and people to become aware and involved in it.
What is ag?
Oh my gosh, great question, Whitney. I'm such a dum-dum. So ag, we call it ag. We should really just say agriculture.
Yeah. It sounds like egg whenever I say it.
Yeah, it literally just sounds like we're talking about a single egg. Yeah, so agriculture, for those of you, who don't know what it is, we can give it a broad definition of the cultivation of land and animals for food, clothing, consumption, whatever you want to call it. That's basically what the broad definition. Do you have anything to add to it, Whitney? I feel like I'm a blanket statement over ag.
No, that was good. I just feel like egg, when we say egg, it's like
agriculture. Oh, you just wanted me to say agriculture. I'll edit that definition out.
Just in case you didn't know.
Just in case some people might not know. We're advocating for ag. Got to make sure people are on the same page. Agriculture. Yeah. So yeah, that organization was really important to me. I was in a couple other clubs, student farm, agribusiness management. Those are very different, and I think those were really helpful to help me see two different sides of agriculture and how both can be productive and sustainable and efficient for the environment, for farmers, etc. So yeah, that was really what I dedicated my time to, and I am now working for a horticulture broker, which I'm doing a nursery product assistant manager role. And so this role I think is kind of cool because it kind of ties all my minors into one job. So I'm doing a lot of plant identification. I'm doing a lot of pricing. I'm talking to customers. This week I actually am going to a new vendor we acquired. So it's kind of cool that I can have all these things in one as a first job. It's been a little tricky working from home because it's hard to be trained from home, especially with what I'm doing. I have a lot of questions, and sometimes it's hard to have questions, especially during quarantine, because it's hard to get a hold of people. And because, a lot of people are working from home too, and they're taking care of their parents, they're taking care of their children, they're taking care of different people. So it is hard in that aspect, but I do think that this job can evolve to be something that's really good for me. And yeah, it's a good first step.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. How do you feel like in your day-to-day life, like in this role, in your home, doing your job, like what is like the overall feeling that you're having as a post-grad?
Right. Wow. Thanks, Whitney. Really asking the deep questions. Let me be cautious.
Like you said, you can say anything. It's a podcast.
You're right. It is just one big rant about anything you want it to be. No, I think right now I feel stable and I feel comfortable, which is not necessarily good or bad, I think. I think I like to sometimes be uncomfortable, but I think right now, I don't know how I could do that, but I think this podcast is kind of making me uncomfortable. So I think that's good. But no, I feel pretty stable, I think, which is a good feeling. I think I'm in a good spot. I think that my job is doing good things for me and guiding me towards what I want out of my career goals. I'm living with my family. I don't know if I touched on that. I moved back home because of where my job is at,
What
and
is that like?
it's really funny. It's a really glamorous. No, I think it's good because I haven't lived full time with my parents and my siblings in a while, so I was just living with my parents for a while there, but now my siblings moved back in for a month, and that's been really funny because we're all adults now, and no one tells you like how to live with your siblings in adulthood. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure if that's something someone should tell you. I'm not sure if it's like a typical thing, but that's been interesting, kind of just re-navigating those relationships and knowing how to have them and what to talk about. Like, I'm like, are we allowed to be friends now? Like, what do we do?
That makes sense because it's like you all went away and you learned your own things and you became your own people and like outside of your like family bubble and dynamic, and now you're all back together.
Yeah, so it's rough sometimes, but I think for the most part it's good because like I said, I don't know when I'll get this time back again to be with everyone like this consistently. But yeah, that's where I'm at with my life. We can go into a little bit deeper, but I want to hear about what you're doing, what you're up to, and how you're feeling, because we're doing totally different things with the same major and living in different areas with different people. So let me know what you're up to.
Yeah, well, I just also wanted to comment on the living with your family thing. I remember when we were freshmen and I showed you this chart of how many more times in your life you're gonna see your family, like how many more full days you'll spend with them. And it was like after you graduated, this insanely small amount, which, you know, looks different to everybody how they feel about that. But I just remember we were like, whoa, this looks totally different. So maybe we'll try to plug that resource into the YouTube page so you can all look at it as well. It was really eye-opening to us, I think, as freshmen, and kind of made me want to live closer to home, which brings me to Annapolis, where I'm at right now. So I'm about 3.5 hours from my family, my immediate family, and about 2 hours from Tess. So got that one too. And yeah, so I also graduated with a double major in agricultural science and geography, minor in entrepreneurship and innovation. And right now I work for a program within the Chesapeake Bay region working on water quality. And I do a lot of their administrative and logistical tasks, which is kind of sometimes challenging for me. At Penn State, I felt like I was able to be like a leader. I had a lot of autonomy and was really given the agency to like make difficult decisions, and did a lot of work fundraising money, did a lot of work with student-led initiatives that had an impact in terms of sustainability, which I'm really passionate about. And now I'm doing a ton of administrative, entry-level, earning your way work, which I totally respect, but I am antsy and a little angsty about it. And you know, water quality is really important to me. Sustainability is really important to me. I'm happy to be where I am. I love the area I live. There's a lot of pros, but I think that's part of the reason why Tess and I wanted to do this, is because we majored in the same thing. We have incredibly different lives. And I think that's like the beauty of post-grad, and we can learn from each other in the spaces that we're in. And so that's a little bit about my job. And then I'm living with my partner, which, like, I don't even know what to call him. I feel like
Yeehaw. I just think of like square dancing. Like, I literally just think that you have your arm in, I think you can call him Paul.
We're square dancing.
Yeah, I literally feel like you're like, let's just do some square dancing.
But when I call him maybe this is relatable to anybody, I don't know, when I call him my boyfriend to work coworkers or anybody in general, I feel like the feeling is like, oh, like, you're living with your boyfriend. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like partner makes it sound more serious. And so when I talk to people, I'm like, oh, my partner does that, instead of like, oh, my boyfriend.
No, I mean, I definitely agree with you. I do think like there's some weird thing going on in the world that when women say their boyfriend, it seems like but I feel like men can say my girlfriend and it's not as like taboo. I don't know what it is, but I do agree with you. I do think that people are like, oh, you're with your boyfriend.
Yeah, so I'm living with my partner slash boyfriend slash whatever. If somebody has a better word, let me know. Significant other is just a mouthful. So like, yeah, when we applied, we just got a dog that we adopted. Super excited.
Yeah, you want to talk about that? I feel like you've done a lot of life-changing things in your past couple months, and yeah, getting a dog is a huge step too with your partner, with your SO, with your boyfriend.
With my SO slash partner. Can we see her? There she is. I literally just ripped my laptop upside down. Yeah, so, but even when we applied for her, we both like said partner. Like we were both like, oh yeah, my partner and I want to adopt a dog, because if we were to say boyfriend, girlfriend, I feel like they'd be like, when are you guys gonna break up? Like, but partner could imply that we're married.
That's so interesting.
We were so elusive about it.
And like, why? Why does it need to be that way?
I don't know. Maybe it doesn't, and it's like something I have in my brain. Like it might not need to be that way, but.
No, because I agree with you. But then again, like we shouldn't always just be like, I agree with you. So it's obviously a huge worldwide issue.
So it's obviously like the nation's expectation. So I don't know, but that's one thing that I wanted to touch on. So I'm living with Paul, and that's been really interesting. And I feel like there's been a lot of up and downs, and we can go into that at some point. I just feel like it's important to be candid about like the fact that the first couple weeks we were living together were a little bit challenging, because we had to learn how to live with each other, and like that's okay, and I love him and we're doing good. But so that's good. Adopted a dog, we're excited. But yeah, I'm definitely struggling with a few things: making friends and staying true to like my motivations and ambition while I'm in a role that like doesn't really give me much agency or autonomy. And that's not to like bash my job. I'm thankful I have it, but at the same time, like as somebody that was director of the farm and like the sustainability coordinator for a unit serving like 20,000 people a day, like I am being very humbled and moving back down the ladder.
You know, and I think it's good. I know that like it is hard. Like we did so much, and it is hard to be like kind of put at the bottom of the totem pole and then kind of have to figure out how to work our way back up. But I do think that it's important, and I do think that we'll learn and we'll be better people for it, but it is very frustrating.
Yeah, it's definitely
like, who's making the decisions, because if it's not me, it's obviously not the right decision.
I know, and that's such an unhealthy way to think. I'm like, you know, well, I was involved, and that's toxic.
You're like, why is my voice not being heard? Excuse me.
Yeah, like that's just, sometimes you gotta accept that like your voice isn't heard. But I'm really curious about like ageism in the workplace, and you know how these things interact on both sides. So maybe we can learn more about that along the way. And yeah, so that's where I'm at, and I'm like happy to be here, but at the same time, I'm definitely sometimes struggling a little bit.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about like kind of, so what is one thing like since you've graduated that you feel like has been easier, has made you feel better? Because I noticed that as soon as I graduated, like something was lifted off of my chest.
Yeah.
So I'm curious like what that looked like for you. I feel like I might know, but like also maybe I don't. Tell me.
I'm so curious I'll answer, and then I'm also so curious for you to tell me what you think the answer was supposed to be. I think that's such a good question, so appreciate that. I feel like when we graduated, what was lifted off? Well, two things. One, just generally, it was so refreshing to not have to do Zoom school anymore, and that felt amazing, because that was stressful and isolating, and just knowing that that was done kind of let go of the expectations I think we had for senior year, because we were like, senior year is done, I'm an adult now. So that felt really good in a weird way.
Oh yeah.
Across the stage of Maddie's living room.
It was rough. It was honestly, that was rough.
Yeah, it's funny, but it's so I feel like that was one thing. But then I also just think that, you know, so much of my life was just those last 4 years, I was just unable to do a lot of things that interested me personally, because I was so like in my mental brain, that doesn't make any sense, but like podcasts, books, movies, things like that, like were a no-go, except like maybe I'd be able to finish one podcast a week on my walks to and from classes or to and from meetings. So having that time now is really awesome. And like having the time to like work out in the morning is really great. And just having like, I guess, autonomy in that personal part of my life instead of being booked from like 8 to 8 every day.
No, that's literally what I thought your answer was.
Wow, you know me so well.
No, I do think, you know, in college or university, whatever you want to call it, your brain is just so programmed to run a mile per minute, and you're so programmed to multitask and get things done, but like you can't multitask. There's no way it's even possible. I'm not sure who said you can multitask, because everything that I've done while multitasking has turned out horrible. Like incomplete, awful, bad material. And
Yeah.
I do think that now that we're done, we can actually pour ourselves into stuff that we are interested in and what we want to partake in. Because like you said, like I've read so many books.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, and it's good because I feel like now I can be mindful of the books I want to read and mindful of the podcasts I want to listen to, because I'm not like, oh shoot, I only have 30 minutes. Do I watch an episode of New Girl? Do I work out? Do I have a snack? Do I cry, or do I take a nap?
I know all of the moments where we would come home. Tess and I were roommates, if we haven't.
Oh, right. Like, should we have touched on that? Like, we should talk about our history with each other then.
Yeah, we should. But so Tess and I were roommates, and we would come home and be distressed, and you know, we'd be like, do you need to sit down? Like, do you need to take a nap? Like, do you want a snack? And we would just be like, I don't have enough time to like cry or do any of that. So like, I'm just gonna
like pull it together in 20 minutes. Right?
Yeah, we'd be like, okay, like wipe the tears, let's go. Like
walk to the meeting.
Like, let me look at my calendar to see when I can schedule a cry in there.
No, I think I'm gonna share one story that I think really applies to how a lot of people that are going to college feel, but don't really talk about too much. So this was when Whitney and I were living together, I think for 2 years at this point. And Whitney had a job. She had a lot of things going on. She had like 3 jobs at one point, and she was involved in like 3 clubs, was trying to manage her time really well and was doing a great job. But there was one day she came home and she had iced coffee in the fridge. And I was like, Whitney, like, yeah, go get your iced coffee, like sit down on the couch, like regroup, like you have 20 minutes, like you never have this time, like enjoy it, you deserve it. And she was like, oh my gosh. So she goes over and lays on the couch with the coffee in her hand and spills it like all over the couch. And she's like, oh shoot, like I wanted that coffee, I'm so mad, and was very upset that she spilled this coffee. And then I'm just talking to her, I'm like, let's just try to forget about it, let's have a conversation. And then 10 minutes later, she's still holding the empty cup, and she's like, Tess, where's my coffee? So I think that just like she forgot that she spilled the coffee because of how much her brain was just programmed to be like, next thing, next thing, next thing. And I think that that's so true of how you're supposed to act. And I think like, because now we're in post-grad, we're like, what's next? How am I allowed to sit on this couch and read a book for an hour and not feel like I'm being inefficient?
I know, and then be like, what do I do next? And so, I don't know, I guess I have a question for you, and it's that, like, do you ever feel fearful of like losing that like capacity to go like boom, boom, boom? Or do you feel like, because I feel fear, like, do you feel fearful? I feel fearful.
Well, you know, that's a really good question. I think right now I'm kind of happy I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
I'm happy I don't feel like I need to do that. I think I kind of wanted a year or so to not feel that way, just because it's been 4 years of that. But I do think at some point it is healthy to get that, like, what's next, what's happening. And I do think and I know everyone brings it back to coronavirus, but I do think coronavirus is putting those limitations on. You can't do much. You can't plan trips. And I know you and I would be planning trips. We'd be planning to do other things if Rones weren't happening. But I do think that's a good question. I mean, maybe I should feel like I need to be on my game.
I don't know if you need to feel that way. Like, I think it's healthy to like take a breath and appreciate like the time to actually think about things in your life and where you want to be. So I feel like that's good. I think I'm also a little crazy when it comes to like the need to like boom, boom, boom. And so,
Well, yeah. And like, let me ask you too, like part of me is like, do you think everything you did, I mean, and I think everything you did was meaningful, but do you think everything you did has taken you to the moment that you're at right now in your life? Like, do you think you had to do everything you needed to do to get there? Because some things I did, I'm like, did I need to do that? Because I'm not sure.
No, and I appreciate that question because the answer I think is no.
Right.
And I think that there's two ways that I'm looking at that right now, and I'm curious to hear like kind of how you're looking at it, because one is like I wanted to do a lot of those things, and I know maybe this is like maybe I'm rose-colored glasses on with this, but I believe that like the work that I did at Penn State for like sustainability and things like that will have moved forward positively and like hopefully motivate others to do the work. So I feel good about that. But there's also some things that I did that I was like, I don't really need to be doing that. And there are also things that I did, like I was a waitress for like 4 years, and that was like I needed to do that. So part of me is like I needed to do all those things, but I don't know if they necessarily like help me where I am now. I mean, I just expressed like I feel like I have all these skills that I gained in those 4 years doing all these really hard things. And now I'm just taking meeting minutes and organizing emails for people. And that just doesn't feel like good. And so I feel like frustrated because I'm like, that was good shit that I did. And now it's obsolete. I'm trying not to think about it that way because I know that maybe in some world it's beneficial to at least Penn State or the people, or in some world it's going to be beneficial to me later. It's beneficial to me as a person, but not in my job. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I 100% agree. I think there are some classes that were a little iffy. And like we spent money on those classes for me to just be like, I hated that class, Whitney. Do you know what I mean? Like that was like $20 a class of me just being angry.
You know how many skinny margaritas that is a day?
That's like so many. I don't even want to know. I don't even want to think about that number because it honestly, it's frustrating. But I do think you and I are very alike in the way that we try to see some sort of positive in everything that's very negative. Like, what can I gain from this? What can I learn from this? Let's see and I do think a lot of that is you taught me how to do that. I mean, my parents obviously raised me pretty well, but I think you have lived with me during 4 years of what is really sculpting years of your life and your future. And I do think, having you as a roommate helped me with that. And I think maybe we should talk about that and how to kind of, I don't know, cultivate that relationship, because I do think a lot of people that are listening think that you and I are just like friends, but that's not it.
No, I think we should talk about that because I think that's something that, applied a lot in our university life, but also applies a lot now about how to navigate friendships, which is like a huge thing that we're both thinking about and struggling with. And like, yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, we should definitely talk about that. Do you want to like, I guess one of my questions for you, so Tess and I met freshman year, and I'm curious, and we've lived together sophomore year, and I'm curious to hear from you, like what you expect that experience to be like versus what it was like.
I gotta think about that. So I think in terms of expectations, I know when we first signed that lease together, I didn't really know who you were completely. And I think a lot of people don't really know who the person is that they're signing a lease with unless they were like high school friends, and then went to school together, to a university together. Because how do you learn about something? You need more time. And I know you've been with Paul for a year, but you've always said like it's going to take a minute for him to learn a lot about me.
Yeah.
And I think living with someone, it is like dog years. You learn a lot more when you're living with them than when you're just going to class with them and getting a coffee here and then. But yeah, I think when I signed that lease with you, I just expected to have fun and just have a partner to enjoy that with, square dancing, to yeehaw baby. I think I just kind of expected to have, you know, a friend to come with me. I honestly was like, she's a good friend. Like, I think it'll be good for me. We'll see what happens. But I did not expect for you to teach me and guide me and help me. I act like you're like I don't know, like a ninja, like the way that I'm like talking about you, like helping me find my chi. I just watched Mulan, that's why I said that. I had to throw a chi in there. No, I didn't expect that. And I think the reality was that you really, I'm going to get emotional, so I need to just like look away from the camera. I think the reality is that I am a very different version of myself because of living with you. And I think it was hard. It was really hard sometimes. We've had some nasty arguments. We've had some good arguments. We've had some great laughs. We have great moments. I feel like we've really experienced it all. And I know a lot of people say that, and it's a really cheesy thing to say, but I think we've really experienced so many things together. And at this point, I'm like, you can't turn back. Like, you cannot run away from me because you know way too much. You've seen me do way too much. And you've seen me grow. And I think that another thing that I want to point out too is like, I'm really happy I have you because you're a girl's girl and you support girls. And I think it's hard to find someone who's genuinely a girl's girl and wants people to go further in their relationship with other girls and with other just people in general. And I think it's hard to find someone who is genuinely not jealous of that. Because sometimes I'm like, I'm jealous that she has these relationships. Why is she not jealous of mine? And you're like, because you're learning, you're doing other things, you're meeting other people, like that's good for you, right? And I'm like,
I guess so. Yeah, no, I think it's just very true. And I feel like a lot of people that do know us are like, oh, Whitney and Tess are best friends. Valid, big friendship. Maybe not that big
right.
friendship. But I feel like when we first lived together, it was really not unsettling. We just didn't know anything about each other in terms of like how we operate and how we live as people and what our like, I don't even know if we knew what each other's values were. We were like, Tessa's kind of clean and I'm kind of clean and we're relatively level-headed. We'll figure it out.
We both have knit bags that look like
Yeah, honestly, the reason Tess and I are friends is because we both showed up to Penn State New Student Orientation with knit bags and complimented each other and then sat together in the like icebreaker circle, and that's it. We're honestly not that similar.
No.
But living with her was really, it made me a better person. I think that we made each other better, and that is really meaningful. But we also fought. We also like really had to learn how to live with each other. And like, I think we definitely felt irritated and definitely felt confused. And we had to like keep going back and being like, how do we talk about this? How do we think about it? And how do we keep each other in our lives? Because we've seen too much and we value each other so much, even if we're like super hurt and by like something somebody said, or if we're like just aggravated. It's just keeping each other in our lives. And so as post-grads, I know that like a lot of people have those relationships and are going through struggles of like, I just moved, maybe I moved really far. How do I keep this person that I love and value in my life in a way that's like healthy when we used to be able to talk to each other for like 2 hours a day?
Right. No, that's really true. And I think that's why our relationship is so strong now in post-grad, and the fact that we can talk to each other every day is because we know that the other one is still going to be there when we need it. And I think that's another reason why we started this podcast, is so we could spend more time together secretly. Yeah, and I think we transformed together and we watched the other one transform. And I think that in thus return, we kept making a new relationship with each other, and it kept blossoming. And I think that's why post-grad we're feeling good with each other, because we know all the hurdles that we've been through, and that this one isn't even as close to as rough as other ones have been.
Yeah, that's true. And we can dive more into that in like later podcasts and talk about like what that means to us and what that means to us now in post-grad life for sure. But I guess I I'm curious, like, how you're feeling about living back in your hometown and like the friends that you might have had in high school, because I know that changes for people so much when they go to college, and like friends you have in high school might fall out, you might get stronger. What is it like being back in your hometown? And
Yeah. It's sometimes challenging because it does feel weird being like, oh, am I back in high school? Because that wasn't pleasant. um, so it is sometimes rough being like, okay, here I am doing similar things I did 4 years ago. Is this something I want? Which I think, that's healthy. I think a lot of people feel that way. I think a lot of people have, sometimes attached negative feelings to hometowns. I think that's kind of a universal thing. Um, but I do think my parents have changed, my siblings have changed, and I think everyone has kind of grown a little bit. So I think with that having been changed, it feels different. And I I don't feel stuck like how I did in high school. I think that was really bad because I felt very stuck. I was like, I can't keep doing this every day. And that's why Penn State was such a relief. But I think that's not there anymore. And I think that's really good for me. And I'm doing something I like. And I think, I kind of have like a mental timeline for myself so that I kind of can see a light at the end of the tunnel. Like I do enjoy being with my parents. I like the relationship I have with them. And I'm glad I have that because I know it's hard to have. And it's also challenging. Like I think that's something I should touch on. Like it's not always easy because, there still is a difference and there still is arguments about certain things that are going on in the world that I don't agree with what they're saying. And I'm like, to what extent do I argue this? To what extent do I just say it's a generational difference?
yeah,
And I think that's hard because it's just kind of like they were not taught this. Like they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the skills that I have learned and that have been ingrained in the system that I went through. So they don't actually know the depth of it. And I do think to some extent, people could argue me and say they could do the research, they could do whatever they need to do to educate themselves. But I do think at a point when you get to the age that they're at, it's hard to do that. And it's hard to be open when you're just done. You see the light at the end of your actual physical tunnel. And it's hard to kind of, welcome in new perspectives sometimes. And I'm trying to be understanding of that, but I know who I am and how I have worked to understand different perspectives. Like it was hard for me to learn that. And I'm like, okay, so why aren't you doing the work? But so I think it's been good in terms of just kind of challenging me and helping me learn how to communicate every day. But I'm happy I have them. I'm happy I can count on them and lean back on them for so many reasons. So that's been really healthy for me. But yeah, I feel like I have a timeline. I know that eventually I'm going to find my own place, have my own space. But I think it's good for me to share this with them right now and kind of move forward that way.
yeah.
But yeah, friends, that's really tricky. And I feel like I have a couple people here that I enjoy and that I like to be with, but I think it's hard because I don't want to be one of those people that have been like, I have changed so incredibly much. And maybe I already said that in this podcast. I feel like that's all we just talked about. And I feel very, very fake.
Here we are. We have changed. We're reborn.
You're so much better. But I do think it's so hard because my relationship with people in high school is so different than it is now. I just think like they haven't seen me at some low lows in college, and I just feel like that has turned me into something else, someone else, and I think it's just hard to. I don't know. Some people I also meant like, do I want to reconnect with you? Like I'm unsure. Like, what are the vibes that I want in my life? I don't know about that one. So I'm happy you asked those questions because I feel like I don't know, and I feel like I should figure out that answer.
Yeah, and I mean, and we've talked about this too, like, it doesn't mean just because you've grown, it doesn't mean that somebody else hasn't grown, but you might have just grown in like two different directions at the same time. So like, it doesn't, you're not saying like, I'm better than everybody that I used to be friends with, but like, you both had 4 years apart and you grew in like very different ways and it became maybe very different people. And like that's, you know, it makes sense if you don't jive as much as you used to, or maybe you can't find as much common ground. And it's always good to like try to have those relationships, but at the same time, it's like you're not saying you're better, just you grew differently. Like, and I definitely think I've experienced that with like growing differently from friends. And even post grad, I think people that I was close with like a couple of months ago, I'm still seeing, you know, the growth in different directions. And like as you get deeper into what you're interested in and passionate about, and like your self-identity gets deeper in you grow in different directions, and it can be kind of hard.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way of describing it. Yeah, it's just everyone's different. I think right now in such a transitional period, so you can't even sometimes see eye to eye with people, and some are willing, some aren't, and sometimes it feels like you're just flexing your life, but you're just genuinely talking about your life.
Yeah, and I think that's why we wanted to do this, because there's so much comparison and everyone's at a different point, and like that's okay, and like we can still talk about it. And I think talking about it will hopefully like bring exposure to the different things that people are experiencing, and hopefully bring some empathy amongst other post grads, instead of like jealousy or comparison or disappointment with your own decisions in your own life, because it's so different. Yeah. Right. So I guess, is there anything else you wanna touch on?
You know, I feel like we really kind of gave a good background. I mean,
yeah, I think there's so much that we could have shared and probably will continue to, but I think this is like a good. Do you have 2 words?
2 words
to describe your post-grad life?
You know, I meant to think about this. How about you go first, and I'm just gonna sit with it for a second. Do you know?
Yeah, so I thought about this, and I realized that the words might change based on the literal day and how I'm feeling. Today, one of the words I think is pivoting, or pivot, because so much of the routine that I had and the life that I had is so different from what I have now, and I feel like I'm constantly pivoting and realizing that something doesn't jive with me, realizing it's trouble hard. It's difficult to make friends.
You sound like the Music Man when he's like, we got trouble down in the city.
Yeah, so it's not troubling, but it can be challenging and difficult to make friends. And I'm just trying to keep pivoting and keep moving forward and keeping like, what's wrong with the situation? What do I not like, and how can I change? So that's another thing. And then it definitely isn't like the most positive or productive second word, but I kind of feel bored sometimes. I think my job is, and this is such a pessimistic way to look at it, but I think sometimes the work that I'm doing in my job, like I talked about, feels insignificant to me, which sounds so dirty coming out of my mouth, but and so I think those are my 2 words, and I'm just trying to figure it out. And like, you know, it's also coronavirus, and I think that links to the boredom, but yeah, and I think I'm grateful for things like this to use the creative mind and
get the stimulation. No, I think I'm happy that you're being authentic about it. I think it's hard to do that, because it feels like people are like, you feel like you're disappointing people because you did you did so many wonderful things in college. You were such an outstanding student. You did so much work for people. And I do think that coming from someone like you and being as candid as you are, I think that it's really inspiring and insightful for people to know that you have to keep working. You have to keep finding what works and what doesn't work. And I think pivoting is a good word for you in that sense.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that is just something that won't necessarily be post-grad. I mean, everything from now on is post-grad, but I think that will be something that I have to hold on to my entire life. And maybe I have this like rosy colored vision about the fact that like once school is over, I wouldn't have to work as hard. And I don't think I do in some spaces, but I feel like I have to work harder in some others. And so I think life is just a lot of hard work, if I'm being honest. And I'm just trying to work as hard as I can and to get the life that I want. How about you? Do you know the words?
Yes. So I'm gonna say that my first word is learning. Just in like every sense of everything that I'm doing, I think that I'm learning. I'm learning how to do a new job. I'm learning how to be a better daughter. I'm learning how to be a better sister, better friend, better girlfriend, better all these different things. And I think if I stop learning, that's when I start to feel stagnant and stuck, and I don't want that to ever happen. So I think that I'm going to keep practicing that and learning how to be more cautious and more aware of my surroundings and the people I'm communicating with, which then brings me to my second word, listening. I think a lot of my time, and Whitney, you can back me up on this and expose me, I love talking, hence this podcast. And I think I need to do more listening, because I do think that I'm so quick to be like, why did that person say it like that? Oh my gosh, like, let me just come back at them with a reply. But I'm like, let me sit back, listen to what they're saying, maybe interpret it in a different way, because I want to actively listen, not just listen, but to kind of, make sense of it for me and sit with it, and kind of with that. And like I was saying, with my parents, having these conversations, hard conversations, I think listening is important. And I've honestly always been struggling with it. I think I've gotten better, but I do think I want to keep growing, because it is definitely hard. Because I think everyone has it naturally to be like, someone's talking, let me get my reply in line, ready to fire. Yeah, like, let me get it ready so that I am on my game. But then I miss half of what they're saying, so it's not even connected to what they're saying.
And that's honestly so hard, especially even like in this conversation, because I want to be ready to respond to you, right? I don't want to just be like, yeah, let me sit with that. But it's also like, I want to hear everything that you have to say in its entirety, and that can be a really challenging balance when you're trying to have a productive conversation with somebody. But I think that like taking a beat and walking away sometimes, especially when something's heated, is so important. And I've noticed myself doing that with Paul, because I'll be like, listen, I don't have the words right now to explain how I'm feeling, and I also need to think about how you're feeling, because I'm feeling way too reactive right now. And I think learning and listening are like post-grad and life, and I appreciate your kind of like drive to keep learning and just understanding that like that is how you grow, and like that is how you be a better person for the people that you care about in your life, and strangers that like you don't know, but like you don't want to make them have a harder day.
Right, like there's no reason to make me my disdain and my anger, whatever it is, ruin someone else's time. And that's why we're here for it.
We are so here for it. And we thank you all so much for listening and engaging with us today. And in the next episode, we'll have on a good friend of ours to talk about her life post-graduation, and interview her and hear her perspective. And we'll give more updates on our Instagram for that to come. So if you want to go ahead and give us a follow at Here For It Podcast, we'll link it down in the video. And we're just excited to have you all as listeners. Please feel free to email us if you have any questions or want us to talk about any specific topics. If you want to be a guest on the show, email us at tessandwhitney@gmail.com.
Yeah, like, subscribe, follow, tell your friends. And in kind of lieu of Whitney saying about messaging us about things you want to hear, things you want us to talk about, also kind of let us know different people we should reach out to help promote us. I feel like you also have a lot of resources, and we want to know. So yeah, we are here for it, baby.
We're here for it. Have a great day. Love, Whitney and Tess.
XOXO.